Hello, everyone, and Merry Christmas to all the members of our community that celebrate this great day today or tomorrow, sorry, on 25th of December. It's Christmas Eve, of course, and I will say majority of our community probably is Western Christian, right? So definitely, I wish you all the best to you, to your families, to your friends, to your communities. Have a wonderful holiday and great and happy and successful upcoming new years. And thank you for being part of our community here too. As you all know, dear friends, we Eastern Orthodox Christians, most of us are celebrating Christmas on 7th of January, although uh, we all are one big Christian family and their basics are the same, isn't it? Love, kindness, respect, and that's what exactly I have to, and I want to wish you all love, kindness, a lot of kindness, happiness, respect, all the best. That's been said, dear friends. Of course, we have to continue our work. I have to continue work. And there are quite a number of news that I want to share in this update. Unfortunately, there is very little news of celebratory kind. Unfortunately, we are living in a world where a lot of negative things are happening. And the first news that I want to share with you in this update is also unfortunately about a tragic event that happened in Moscow. Two officers, two security forces officers noticed some suspicious activity of the person in one of the Moscow's district. They went to check the situation, and it turned out that this suspicious element was carrying bomb or trying to plant a bomb under the car. And when officers approached her, this bomb detonated. Earlier, there was no understanding what has happened, but little, like half an hour ago, before I launched this live stream, I was checking the news updates, and according to latest understanding, latest information, third person, two officers died at the scenery, and the person who was approached by these officers was actually suspect, actually criminal who was carrying these explosive materials. RT reported about it, many other media outlets, of course, but RT also has information that two traffic cops are killed in a Moscow bomb blast. Two Russian traffic police officers and another person have been killed by an explosive device in Moscow, not far from where General was assassinated earlier this week. The incident occurred overnight in the south of the Russian capital. According to investigative committee, two officers noticed suspicious person near their police car and approached to investigate, after which an explosion occurred, killing all three. The case is being investigated as an attempted murder of the officers. And as you know, on Monday, Lieutenant General Fanila Sarvarov was killed in the same neighborhood when a bomb plant under his car detonated. And I reported about this terrorist attack also, of course, and I have no doubts that behind this terrorist attack, behind both these terrorist attacks, as behind many other terrorist activities on Russian territory, is Kiev regime, Western-backed terrorist regime of Zelensky, and first and foremost, British intelligence service, MI6. I have no doubts about it whatsoever. Without direct involvement of MI6 and their American allies, CIA, I don't think the regime would be able to gather information about high-ranking Russian officers, their whereabouts, right, and to carry out this kind of terrorist attacks. Let's say what investigation will say about it, but Me personally, I am quite sure it is Western secret services that are behind this terror campaign that is being waged against Russian civilians, Russian militaries, Russian public figures, and until this terrorist regime exists in Kiev, until Western ruling class is not being forced to capitulate, I don't think we will see any changes in this regard, no matter how hard Russian law enforcement agencies, Russian security agencies, going to try to neutralize all the threats. Unfortunately, we have to keep in mind that capabilities of American CIA or the British MI6 and their proxies and their assets is quite significant, and every now and then they'll be able to pull off some terrorist attack. Although vast majority of such attacks have been thwarted and risks being neutralized by Russian law enforcement agencies. I mean, they have no break, by the way. Russian security forces are working 24/7 without breaks for many years now, and literally on daily basis we are receiving reports about terrorist attacks being thwarted in many different regions of the Russian Federation, including capital. But sometimes MI6, CIA, and their proxies are managing to conduct terrorist attack. Also, I want to share with you in this update information that basically, at least indirectly, confirms what I was saying all along about this so-called peace process that was initiated a couple of weeks ago by Trump and his 28-point so-called peace plan. Today, number of media outlets are reporting that Zelensky revealed their 20-point peace plan that allegedly Western ruling class is proposing now, right, through Zelensky. So-called media on the Kiev-controlled territory also report about it, and on one of the channels, by the way, on Telegram, I did see what these 20 points are, and we can go through these points one by one, and I think you will agree that yes, indeed, all this so-called peace process activity on behalf of Western ruling class was a deception operation from the beginning. Because once I will go through this 20-point peace plan, you will understand that this is anything but a peace plan, because Moscow will never agree even on original 28-point plan of Trump, if it was even a Trump's plan, and obviously Moscow will never ever even consider to waste time on this latest 20-point plan of the Western ruling class or the Russian enemies. So let's go through these points. Recognition of Ukraine's sovereignty, that's the first point. Second, Russia-Ukraine non-aggression agreement with monitoring along the line of contact, and the Western ruling class Kiev regime implying that once if ceasefire is achieved, then coalition of willing that plans to deploy its troops. This is no go for Moscow. This is not the topic that Moscow will even discuss. Third, the security guarantees for Ukraine, whatever that means. Ukrainian army, armed forces kept at 800,000 troops level in a peacetime. Yet again, this is not something that Russia will ever agree. I remind you, dear friends, that in 2022, when in March, April, when there was negotiations between Moscow and Kiev that almost succeed and would succeed if US and UK did not derail, or the Western ruling class did not derail those talks that initially was launched in Belarus, but then moved to Istanbul, and it's known like Istanbul talks now, isn't it? And during those talks in Istanbul in 2022, Russian side was, according to reports that I have seen, demanded that Kiev regime's armed forces should be kept at 50,000. And allegedly, during the process of negotiation, Moscow agreed to increase the number of Kiev regime's troops from 120 to 150,000, but definitely not 800,000, by the way. This is crazy. Moscow will of course, never agree on that. And after all, how Kyiv regime gonna maintain this 800,000 troops level? It cannot, right? No European country has this much troops, actually, and you can imagine how costly it's gonna be. And one of the reasons why Zelensky is already telling his or making statements directed towards his Western masters is that it's Europe, it's Western countries that have to finance Kyiv regime's army, even when confrontation ends on the line of contact. Yet again, some nonsensical point there, this fourth one. Fifth, the US, NATO, and Europe would provide security guarantees modeled on Article 5 in the event of a Russian attack. This would include a military response and the restoration of sanctions. Yet again, this is also something that Moscow will never agree or sign up for, because this fifth point contains tremendous risks of provoking a direct conflict between Russia and US. First of all, Russia and US. Europe is not that relevant, by the way, let's be real here. But US is a major nuclear superpower, and if anything, none of us should want to see either further extension of this war or the scale of this war that West is waging against Russia. Neither clashes between Russia and US, because if something like that will happen, if Russian and US are in direct military hostilities, open military hostilities, obviously that conflict will very quickly spiral out of control and will transform into a full-scale nuclear exchange, which will be extinction level event for the humanity. And no one can give us guarantees that humanity will even survive in such a scenario, right? So definitely Washington and Moscow have to have a conversation about this point if European countries want to, and they might, Western ruling class, they are quite keen to prolong this conflict against Russia as long as possible, and even to get engaged directly with Russia in the conflict with their European armies. But US should stay out of it, because it's just too dangerous. Russia can demilitarize quite quickly France and UK and their nuclear arsenals, right? We can take care of them. It's not going to be easy, but it's doable. But when it comes to US, by the way, neither US, neither Russia can take out each other's nuclear forces with their single strike. It's just not happening, right? So both of us will have opportunity for retaliatory strike, and that means extinction level event. So Moscow and Washington definitely have to talk this stuff out, and the US have to stay out of this so-called fifth article style guarantee for the Kyiv regime, because after all, nobody can trust globalists, right? And there are globalist control regimes in Europe. Can you imagine this kind of agreement actually being reached? And this terrorist regime in Kyiv, led by Zelensky or Zaluzhny or whomever, and controlled by globalists, actually had these fifth article style guarantees from US. I mean, European states, okay, it's not relevant, but US, that's a whole different story. And what will happen if these globalist controlled European states will provoke clashes on the border and will force Russia to retaliate? US have to launch a war against Russia in that case, as this fifth point demands here, and Article 5 style guarantees will demand. No, it's just too risky. So probably US will have some issues with this point. But anyways, let's continue. Sixth point, Russia would formalize and enshrine a non-aggression policy towards Europe and Ukraine in all relevant legislations. Well, I believe Ryabkov, by the way, deputy of Russian foreign minister, in past couple of days, either day before yesterday or maybe yesterday, already stated that Russia is ready actually to enshrine in Russian legislation non-aggression policy towards the European states, European NATO member states. This can be done if that will make them happier and calmer Okay, Russia can do it because, as Russian president and all the other many other high-ranking officials said, Moscow has no intent to attack anybody, right? And will not attack anybody if not provoked, if not attacked first, right? So I think there is a possibility that this topic actually can end up in a final agreement, which is going to be very much different from this 20-point plan of the Western ruling class. But this particular point can be there too, that Russia, on Russian behalf, and also NATO member states, on their behalf, will enshrine in their legislation policies about non-aggression against each other, right? When it comes to Ukraine, by the way, I'm quite sure once this conflict will end, there will be no Ukraine on the political map. So therefore, how you gonna enshrine in your legislation something about not attacking entity that is not exists? Ukraine, there gonna be no Ukraine on the political map after this conflict will end. Periods, by the way, period. 2 years ago, there was a chance that Ukraine as a state will survive in a landlocked state, right? Kiev and surrounding couple of regions. 3 years ago, there was such a possibility too. And I was always saying that there is a little chance that maybe Moscow would agree to maintain statehood of Ukraine, landlocked form, exclusively in Russian sphere of influence. But now, no, not happening. Not happening, by the way. I'm quite sure about it. Whole of Ukraine will be liberated from enemies of Russia, with exception of Western Ukraine, which will be reclaimed by Western neighbors of this creation of the Bolsheviks. Western Ukraine will be reclaimed by Poland, Hungary, and Romania. So there's gonna be no more Ukraine on the political map. I don't know how long this process will take, this change, right? Process already is happening and will continue, but I think it's just a matter of a couple of years, right? And everyone will have to then print new maps on which there is no freaking Ukraine there, because they're gonna be known. Point 7 in this so-called peace plan of Russian enemies is that Ukraine to join the EU within the fixed time frame with a specific accession date. And I think this topic also has to be discussed by Moscow, because originally, and even nowadays, quite a number of Russian officials are saying that Moscow has no issue if Ukraine would join NATO, join EU, not the NATO. But a point is that EU is transforming into a military alliance itself. It is becoming like NATO, right? And nowadays, EU officials are talking about military stuff much more than they talk about some economical developments, social developments, as they should, because originally this organization, EU, supposed to be economical union, right? Not a military alliance. But it is transforming into a military alliance, and I think it is necessary Moscow to make some changes in its original policies towards the EU, because European Union 5 years ago, or even in 2022, let's say, was a different beast than it is right now. So we have to obviously adapt to their modern realities, our policies. So this 7th point might be issue for Moscow, and should be issue for Moscow, 100%. Number 8, or 8 point, is a global development package to be defined in a separate investment agreement. Okay, whatever that means. Creation of several reconstruction funds with a target of 800 billion. Okay, they can dream about. 10th, Ukraine to accelerate a free trade agreement with the United States. Not happening, by the way. US not going to give free trade agreement to Ukraine. After all, I'm telling you, Ukraine not going to exist on the political map, by the way. Give it a couple of years, right? So 11th point, Ukraine to retain non-nuclear status. 12, Zaporozhye nuclear power plant, no compromise so far, according to Ukrainian side. US proposes trilateral management with the Americans as the main operators of the ZMPP, Ukraine's proposal is 50-50% between US and Ukraine. So you can understand how out of touch with reality those elements are that are writing this kind of stuff in the West, right? Zelensky is talking about it, but this is not something that Zelensky is writing. This is something that his Western masters are coming up with, right? So ZMPP is under full Russian control, and the Russian enemies, Western ruling class, is telling us that, you know what, you have to give us ZMPP, and we and our proxy regime here, we will decide what to do with it. I mean, seriously, get out. Just get lost, man. You're not gonna get nothing, right? Anyways, this 12 point yet again, once again, demonstrates how irrelevant this Western ruling class is in terms of their alleged admirations towards peace. They are not about peace. They are all about escalation, and they're harming Russia, by the way, right? 13th, school education programs are promoting multicultural understanding and combating racism and bias. Well, this actually has to be done on Kiev-controlled territory and will be done once Russia will liberate all historical Russian land, right, and all the peoples. Of course, there have to be new programs in schools, and people and youngsters have to learn respect to each other for sure, because right now, so many kids, by the way, are bullied in the kindergarten, in the Kiev-controlled territory, in the schools, right, just for being Russians, by the way, just for speaking Russian and being a part of Russian culture, Russian world. Just recently, by the way, there was such a sad story that I read on such sad situation that happened in Lvov, for example, Western Ukraine, in a kindergarten, right? When money was collected from the parents, from the families of the kids, right, for presents for their children, New Year's presents or something. And all the kids get their presents except one in that particular class of a kindergarten that this report was about. And when parents of that kid asked what was going on, why their kid didn't get her presents, you know what was the answer? That Ded Moroz or Santa or Saint Nikolai, yes, it was about a religious present celebration or something. Answer was, and I read their screenshots, right, of the conversation, that Saint Nicholas decided not to give presents to Muscovites, to Russians basically, right? They are weaponizing religion too, by the way. They are scum of humanity, all of them in Kiev-controlled territory that are fascist Nazis and openly demonstrating hate towards Russian culture. All of them are scum of humanity. They are anything but Christians, right? Anything but Christians, and they will be punished, man. They should, as they should, right? But that's what they do. Can you imagine if this was your kid? You know, what the hell? Kid was bullied for what? For what? And there are so many instances, by the way, so many instances. Ukraine, this creation of the Bolsheviks, by the way, on the Kiev-controlled territory is total hell, right? And has to be liberated. I can understand that western parts of Ukraine, people there has been brainwashed so much so that they're, you cannot help them, right? So let Poland deal with them, let the Hungarians deal with them, and Romanians, right? But on the rest of the territory, people still maintain their majority of people are still able to stand up for their culture, for their language, religion, right? They are Orthodox Christians. They did not betray Orthodox Christianity, did not join this terrorist criminal organization that CIA created and MI6 created in Ukraine and called it like Ukrainian Orthodox Church or something, that not recognized neither by Russian Orthodox Church, neither by Georgian Orthodox Church, or a majority of Orthodox churches did not recognize that terrorist organization as a church, obviously, right? Unfortunately, only Constantinople Patriarch recognized it, and Greek Orthodox Church, which was clearly a big mistake, by the way, on part of our Greek brothers. But yeah, and they will reverse it. Time will come; they will reverse this decision because they have to. They have to. It's they cannot be in support of scenery, by the way, total sin, right? That cannot be forgiven, man. It's crazy what they did there. But yes, sir, this point, education program, sir, in schools and kindergartens, in universities, definitely have to undergo changes and will undergo changes once Russia will liberate all of historical Russian land, with the exception of western parts of Ukraine. As I said, let their western neighbors deal with that situation there. 14th point, territories. About territories, the most difficult issue, according to our enemies, one option discussed is that Russia withdrawing from Dnipropetrovsk, Nikolaev, Sumy, and the Kharkov regions. In Donetsk, Lugansk, Zaporozhye, and Kherson regions, their proposal is to hold the positions as they are right now. They want to freeze conflict on the current line of contact, by the way. They won't break. I said this many times, sir, and this is not happening. They're also writing that Russia demands Ukraine withdrawal from Donetsk region. US proposes compromise in the form of a free economic zone, which is not happening also because it's not up to Washington, where on Russian territory we're going to have a free economic zone or anything else. If holder positions is rejected, free economic zone would require a referendum, in which case the entire agreement would have to be put to a vote, according to our enemies. Yet again, this is all nonsense, by the way. I don't understand how anybody here in Russia can actually waste time seriously discussing these topics, most of these topics, by the way, with either American side or Europeans or even with Kiev regime. This is, in most of the cases, just total nonsense, right? Anyways, 15th point, Russia and Ukraine commit not to change their agreement by force. 16th, Russia would not obstruct Ukraine's commercial use of the Dnieper River and the Black Sea. The King Burger Spit would be demilitarized. They are telling us again what to do. And 17th, and by the way, this is also irrelevant because, as I said, there's going to be no more Ukraine on the political map. The Dnieper River will be in Russia completely, both banks, right? From Kherson to up to Kiev, by the way. Everything will be Russia. So there is no point for Moscow to discuss these useless points, useless stuff, right? 17th, for prisoner exchange on the all-for-all basis, return of civilian children and their political detainees. 18th, and by the way, when it comes to the topic of children that allegedly Russia kidnapped, you know, Western propaganda that says Russia kidnapped from Kiev-controlled territory 20,000 children, and then that kind of nonsense, right? Which is total BS, by the way, right? Total BS. You know how many names were transferred there to Russian side about children that allegedly were kidnapped from the Kiev-controlled territory? It's little more than 100. Little more than 100 names, actual names of their kids, right? And the Russian side is checking this information. And the Russian side was very clear always on the topic that number of kids were evacuated from settlements on the line of contact that were either lost without parents, without adult relatives, or in most cases, by the way, these children were abandoned by their own parents, and these kids were in what is the facility where children are that have been abandoned by their parents? What is the name? in English, how should I say? What I forget. I forgot the name. Детский дом. Как по-английски? Orphanage, by the way, right? Kids were evacuated from orphanages. And how can anybody blame Russia for that, man? I mean, what kind of soulless people are those in the West, right, that are using this topic to attack Russia? What should Russian militaries do when they see that there is a line of contact, high intensity battle is taking place, and there is orphanage there, right, where kids are living and they're most likely hiding in the basements? They should just ignore and wait until some bomb will hit that building and everyone will die. What the hell, man? Why? How it is even possible that this topic has been weaponized by the West to attack Russia? Topic of saving lives of the kids. It's crazy, man. It's crazy. It disgusts me. Western ruling class absolutely disgusts me, by the way. They are disgusting elements, man. Absolutely, right? So just to know, dear friends, you're gonna hear in the Western media, probably already did, this absolute BS propaganda that Russia kidnapped 20,000 kids or something, which is a lie, by the way, absolute lie. Kiev regime only transferred to Russian side names of little more than 100 kids, and Russian side said, we will do work, and if those kids are in Russia, if their parents or relatives, any relatives, will actually come forward and take responsibilities for those kids, Russia will return. And there was a number of instances, by the way, when, with assistance of UAE, kids from orphanages were actually transferred to their relatives from Kiev-controlled territory. But on this topic, by the way, I have a quite strong opinion, by the way. I don't think, from legal standpoint, yes, maybe Moscow has no legal rights to say no, and Moscow has to transfer those kids to their relatives. But from human standpoint, by the way, I don't like this, because those kids were left by very same relatives, right? Those kids were left by very same relatives in those orphanages. And where is the guarantees that those kids that have now life, by the way, secure, safe life, right? They've been treated as in the best possible way, right? Maybe they are first time happy in their lives, and they have to go back now on the Kiev-controlled territory to their relatives that already abandoned them before. I mean, from human standpoint, by the way, I'm absolutely against this, right? I want those kids to stay in Russia and be happy, man. You understand probably what am I talking about, isn't it? If you were left by your parents in an orphanage, and if you were experiencing that life, by the way, and you end up in Russia, and first time you've been treated greatly, and you feel happy, safe and happy, and you have to now be transferred to your relatives that already abandoned you, you would be devastated, I think, you know. So I have a very stronger take on this, man. Those kids should not go back to Kiev-controlled territory. No, man. But unfortunately, there were instances when, because Kiev regime, for political purposes, using this topic, they are probably forcing those relatives of some of the kids that actually are in Russia to come forward and say that, yes, they want to return these kids. And these transfers did happen with mediation of United Arab Emirates. But and from legal standpoint, Moscow cannot say no. But from human standpoint, I'm against it, man. Those relatives of those kids cannot be trusted, man. They cannot be trusted. They abandoned their kids already, man. And you are giving them kids back? What the hell? But anyways, you know, dear friends, this topic being weaponized by Western ruling class or Western propaganda, and you know how disgusting those people in the Western elites are, because they are attacking Russia for saving kids, man. This is below anything, right? How low this Western ruling class is gonna go, man, in its degeneration? I don't know. It's just enough. Let's continue with some other topics. Ukraine, 18th point, by the way, is that Ukraine to hold their elections as soon as possible after the agreement is signed. 19th point, the agreement. And when it comes to election topic, by the way, first of all, I don't believe there are going to be any agreements, right? But if I'm wrong and there are some, and if Moscow will agree on temporary measures, let's say, right? And elections actually being appointed, it is a big point to know if citizens of Ukraine that live in Russia, and their number is up to 10 million, by the way, this is not a small number, will they be able to vote or not? This is something that definitely has to be and probably will be discussed. At least Moscow will highlight this point. 19th is agreement would be legally binding and overseen by Peace Council chaired by President Trump. And 20th point, after all sides approve the agreement, a full ceasefire would take effect immediately. So that's the 20 points, by the way, that Western world now will push. These 20 points being published through their proxy Zelensky's regime. And you tell me, we went through all the points, right? And you tell me now if this is doable. You tell me if there is even slight chance that Moscow will agree on this 20 points so-called peace plan. No, not happening, isn't it? Let's be real here. Not happening. With the exception of several points from these 20, Moscow would never agree on anything else. Few points, yeah, understandable, but only few from 20. So this is no go, by the way. This is clearly confirmation, in my personal opinion, and all this new wave of talks about peace plans and this and that is just a deception, right? All they want, Western ruling elites and their proxies, is to get some break, man. To have some break. That's all. And Moscow not gonna give them no breaks, man. I think so. Right. Anyways, let's continue with some more news. And Whitaker, by the way, high-ranking U.S. Official, stated that he's also engaged in these talks, right? Kind of. Stated that the parties are discussing some 4 documents on Ukraine. Let me give you some details on that. Participants in a negotiation process to resolve the crisis in Ukraine are working on the 4 final documents. This was announced by U.S. Permanent Representative to NATO, Matthew Whitaker. There are 4 documents on their negotiating table now. 20-point peace plan that we just went through, and it's a non-starter, by the way, with the exception of few points. None of them can be agreed with Russia. Few points, yes, but the rest is no. Pure and simple. Multilateral security guarantees is another one. Special security guarantees from the United States is a third, and the plan to ensure economic growth and prosperity after peace is established, the diplomat said on Fox News. All of these documents are being discussed in real time. I think we now have a pretty good understanding of what Ukraine wants. Whitaker added, and okay, man, they're discussing this stuff with each other, correct? Russia has a main say, obviously, and Russia is not invited. They are coming up with all sorts of plans, and they are then kind of in ultimate form telling Russia that, yeah, you have to agree on this. And every time this happens, Moscow says, you know what? No, thanks. We are good, just stay away from us. And that's exactly what's going to happen this time around too, right? It is what it is, man. Western ruling class not going to trigger Russia to agree on a Minsk free in any shape, in any way, shape or form, by the way. There are going to be no Minsk freeze. Once this conflict will end, and because Western ruling class is not willing to actually de-escalate, special military operation obviously will continue and will be finalized when all of historical Russian land will be liberated, with exception, most likely with the exception of western parts of Ukraine. I spoke about it a million times. There is no need to further elaborate on that. All of Ukraine will be liberated. Western parts of Ukraine, a little bit different story, and Poland, Hungary, and Romania that will make claims on those territories because it's used to be part of these countries in past 2 centuries, let's say, and sometimes in the past 2 centuries. Let them deal with all those Nazis, fascists, and the rest of the human scum that is going to be collected there, right, in Western Ukraine. That's all I have to say about it. All the decent people will be liberated by Russia territories, 100%, by the way, right? Rest, I don't care. I don't even consider them to be anywhere close to decent humans. How they can be, man? Those Nazis and the fascists. How can Nazi be a decent human being? Are you kidding me? Das news agency is reporting that special military operation continues, isn't it? Meanwhile, and will continue, as I said, until all the goals of this operation is achieved. And yesterday, Russian Defense Ministry confirmed the liberation of Andreevka and Prilipka settlements. Also, by the way, a little earlier, we had reports that Vilcha settlement is liberated by Russian forces on the southern flank of Volchansk city. On top of that, Ukrainian armed forces failed to launch a counterattack in a forest in Kharkov region, in the Liman area, by the way. There was an attempt of local-scale counteroffensive by Kyiv regime's forces to reclaim Liman settlement, village, not mistake it to Liman city in a DPR, and they failed. And in this sector, by the way, Russian armed forces neutralized 360 troops of hostile side, right? They tried to launch a counteroffensive. They failed. They lost hundreds of military personnel in that yet another suicidal counteroffensive. Also, RIA Novosti is reporting that Kyiv regime only now acknowledged that they lost Seversk. How many weeks is that Seversk is under Russian control, by the way? Like 2 weeks now or something, right? Only now Kyiv regime acknowledged that, yeah, they lost Seversk. How interesting. But you know what? Nevertheless, it's less time than in some other cases. I remember Kyiv regime for a month or two was refusing to acknowledge that they lost Bakhmut. Remember? This time around, they did acknowledge that they lost city in a relatively short time, right? And let's go through line of contact difference. Little summary here. In Kherson direction, no general changes for now. In Zaporozhye sector, main changes are happening in Gulyai-Polye area, and according to some reports, by the way, Russian troops are about to finalize liberation of the city. Most of the Gulyai-Polye is under Russian control. Most of it, right? Only northern western part is still disputed, allegedly, between the sides. And if so, it well might be that before end of this week, we will have a statement from Russian Defense Ministry that this settlement, Gulyai-Polye, major stronghold of Kyiv regime on most eastern flank of Zaporozhye sector, is in full Russian control and completely liberated. Also, Zarychye settlement, by the way, was liberated by Russian forces, according to some reports. Defense Ministry did not yet confirm this information, but maybe today this information will be confirmed officially. So Zarychye is under Russian control. Earlier, Zarychye is Zaporozhye region, by the way, on the border with the Dnipropetrovsk region. And when it comes to Dnipropetrovsk, earlier there was a report, and I mentioned this in my updates, that Andreevka settlement was liberated by Russian forces in Dnipropetrovsk region. Also significant progress there, of course. Operation to finalize clearing in Mirnograd is accelerating. Kyiv regime is trying hard, by the way, to break into Mirnograd, to create a corridor for its encircled troops to escape. They are sending on suicidal operations, column after column after column, and This Australian Abrams tank that was destroyed, by the way, that I showed you video yesterday, that was, isn't it, or day before, that Australian tank was also involved in one of these suicidal attacks. And these are suicidal attacks because it end is always the same. Entire these attacking forces are eliminated by Russian troops. And Abrams shared the fate of all the other equipment and the militaries of the regime that try to do something like that. Probably they will continue these constant attacks, and I can see reasoning why Moscow will allow them to do so, because it's easy prey, isn't it? Russian troops are holding positions, right? They're strengthening their positions, monitoring the situation, and they're basically inviting Kiev regime to send more and more troops. And Russian militaries don't even have to engage in a close range combat. With drones, by the way, they can eliminate column after column after column, right? And that's what they do, day in, day out. So I can see why Russian local commanders of the Russian troops will say, you know what, let's hold on a little bit. Let's slow down this clearing stuff in Mirnograd. We can take certain parts quickly, but let's keep some of their encircled troops in certain areas, so that Kiev regime will have no option but to send more and more troops to create this corridor, right? To allow these encircled their forces to escape. And while they are coming, we can just take them out without much effort, right? With the drones. If you are local commander of the Russian troops, probably you will see logic in this, right? So therefore, by the way, it is a possibility that Russian side actually might even prolong clearing operations in Mirnograd for time being, as long as Kiev regime is sending those suicidal attacks or launching those suicidal attacks, right? Because you are eliminating enemy in a much easier way, let's say, than it would be done in a close combat. This is war, by the way, and war is hell, right? And when you are a commanding officer, of course, you are looking for ways to eliminate enemy as much as possible with minimal casualties for your troops. It's just that simple. We don't have to be like military experts to understand this. So therefore, you might ask how long this cleaning operation in Mirnograd will last. And I don't know, dear friends. On southern parts, cleaning operation has been finalized, right? Did accelerate at some point, and in a couple of days, whole southern part was under Russian control. In northern parts, Russian troops are advancing, but taking time. Probably Russian troops not even jamming Kiev regime's encircled troops, so that they will demand help from the Kiev regime, right? And Kiev regime will have no option but to send more and more to launch these suicidal attacks, right? To show the public on the Kiev controlled territory that you see, you hear this radio stuff from encircled troops in Mirnograd. They are begging for help, and we are trying, we are sending troops, even what Abrams tanks, by the way, have been sent. So yes, it's a trap, man. It's a trap, and Russian troops become really great, man, with these traps and cauldrons and stuff. The Russian troops learn how to do some operations in a modern type of warfare in ways that no one else knows. And that's why even quite a number of Western military experts are saying that right now, most capable forces in this world, most capable army is the Russian army. And this is true, isn't it? Experience, by the way, experience and knowledge of modern warfare is great in Russian armed forces. What else, by the way? So Mirnograd, I already spoke about Mirnograd, Konstantinovka. Russian troops are basically conducting operations on the southern flank of Konstantinovka to establish control over these several villages: Ilinovka, Berestoka, Stepanovka, Dolga, Belka, Raskoshna. Makes sense. Obviously, Russian troops need to finalize clearing operation on the northern bank of this Klibambik water reservoir. Right, and yes, I guess Russian troops will be focused on the southern side now to liberate these villages. And from the northern part, Russian troops already are like on a short range from main supply and support line, rifle short range from main supply and support line of Kiev regime's garrison in Konstantinovka and Drushkovka. So this road that you see right now on your map is a road of death. Russian troops can eliminate anything that moves here, right? Although Konstantinovka is a quite a big settlement, and obviously it will take some time for Russian troops before it will be fully liberated. Earlier, there was reports that like more than 50% of the Konstantinovka is under Russian control. So progress is there. Also, dear friends, Russian troops further intensifying operations in Liman direction. Russian drones are actively operating in the area already, and the movement of Kiev regime's forces either in Liman or surrounding forest area is very much limited due to Russian activity. And I guess it's a matter of months or two, and Russian troops will fully liberate Liman also. In the Kharkov region, Kupiansk, by the way, main activities on the eastern flank of Kharkov region is happening in the Kupiansk area. Clearing operation is still underway, by the way, on the left bank of Oskol River, on the southeastern side of Kupiansk, and some Kiev regime's forces, due to this constant suicidal counterattacks, by the way, are managing to infiltrate the city, right? And Russian troops then are hunting down these small units of Kiev regime's forces. Among them, a lot of foreign mercenaries, by the way, that being thrown into these suicidal attacks, and a lot of videos, by the way, how these troops being hunted down by Russian drone operators. There is very few, you might be surprised, but nowadays there is very few close range combat is happening on battlefields. It's everything is done by drones almost, right? And yes, I already said, by the way, that on the northern part of Kharkov region, in Volchansk area, Kiev regime did try to conduct a counteroffensive in this forestry area, by the way, to attack Liman, Russian troops in Liman and Prilipka areas, but they failed there. And in the Kharkov region alone, by the way, Kiev regime in previous 12 to 24 hours lost up to 400 military personnel, just in Kharkov region. So that's a short update on developments on the line of contact. Major news is, of course, this tremendous progress of the Russian armed forces in Guliai-Polye, by the way, and most likely before end of this week, we will have an official statement from Defense Ministry of the Russia that Guliai-Polye has been liberated. What else have I bookmarked, by the way, for this update? Well, there was a high-ranking delegation of the Damascus regime in Moscow. They still are here, I think. And well, Foreign Minister of the Russian Federation, Sergei Lavrov, hold a meeting with his Syrian counterpart, Al-Shaibani. This happened yesterday, and it's not just a foreign minister of the Damascus regime, but also defense minister of the Damascus regime that is in Russia, according to Syrian Sana agency, a news agency. And well, it is clear that Damascus actually wants to build some sort of relationships with Russia. Although just a little while ago we were enemies, right? And Russian troops were quite actively eliminating troops of this very regime. But the situation has changed there, and well, maybe we are observing now picture when enemies learning, past enemies are learning to how to work in current, right? And yeah, that's what is happening. Syria clearly, Damascus clearly wants Russia relationships with Russia. They want some help from Russia, and some help will be provided for sure, especially in the humanitarian aspects of it. But yes, it is difficult to say where these contacts will go. from now, right? It is difficult to say how long even this regime in Damascus will hold, because Syria is very fragile, isn't it? Very fragile, and I'm quite sure, by the way, it's only a matter of time, and most likely Syria will undergo full-scale disintegration. Right now, I cannot see how Syria can hold itself as a united country, because there is too much divisions inside, right? There is a Kurdish forces, and there is a religious and ethnic minorities also on the southern western parts of Syria, and there is tensions even among a Sunni majority, right? They are moderate religious groups, and they are radical religious groups, and they are fighting each other too. I mean, Syria is a mess right now, isn't it? All because of the Western ruling class, right? All because of the Western ruling class and their proxy regimes in the Gulf. So yeah, let's see when these relationships between Moscow and Damascus will go. But Russia always was very friendly towards the Syrian people, and therefore I can see Russia providing certain level of assistance in, at least in humanitarian field, for sure. TASS news agency is also reporting that plane carrying Libya's chief of staff has crashed in Turkey, which is well, something of importance, obviously. Very little is known of what had happened her, but private Falcon 50 jet carrying Libyan army chief of staff Mohammed al-Hadid crashed her. The plane crashed near Ankara. It had previously disappeared from radar screens. The Turkish Ministry of Internal Affairs reported that there were 5 people on board. Ankara airport continues to operate following the incident. Turkish rescuers found the wreckage of the plane. Turkish prosecutor's office has launched an investigation into the causes of the circumstances of the incident. The plane may have crashed due to malfunction in the electrical system. This is a speculation on part of Al-Haddad TV. How they know what had happened? No one can know until investigation will say something, right? And this is a relevant development, obviously, because as you know, Libya is divided. After what NATO did to this country, after what Western ruling class did to Libya, by the way, and the Libyan people, this country is a mess also, total mess, right? And there are some southern parts of Libya that is controlled by some extremist jihadist forces, some tribes, uncontrolled territories by either Tripoli or Benghazi. And when it comes to government of Libya, by the way, there is an officially recognized government, as you know, that is based in Tripoli, and this military official was exactly from this regime, Tripoli regime. And Turkey is in support of this regime, by the way, among other countries. And there is another regime that also pretends to be government of Libya. This another one is led by General Haftar, and it's located in Benghazi, right? It's located in Benghazi, major city, major portal city, of course, and especially relevant in terms of energy exports from the Libya, right? Because all the infrastructure mostly was located in the Benghazi area. So there is these two fighting factions in Libya, right? Benghazi one and Tripoli one. Tripoli supported by Turkey, Benghazi is supported by Russia, and there are a number of other countries, for example. And there are also a lot of territories that are in control of some terrorist groups. And well, it is interesting what happened to that plane. What happened to that plane? Was it actually accident or something else? I don't know, but maybe we should expect activization of the hostilities between Benghazi and Tripoli or something, because something was cooking, actually. I think why this high-ranking official military official from Tripoli's regime went to Turkey. What was going on there? Maybe Turkey was prepping Tripoli's militaries to attack, to launch attack against Benghazi. Who knows? Who knows? But yes, it is important because Libya, by the way, is a massive country, isn't it, on the Mediterranean in North Africa, and plays quite significant role in many areas, including energy. So, okay, what else do I have here? RIA Novosti is reporting that, well, Nebezhny, official representative of Russia in the UN, stated that Russia strongly condemns the seizure of tankers from the Venezuela. Understandable statement. We strongly condemn the seizure of tankers by the US military and de facto imposition of a naval blockade of Venezuela, he said during the Security Council meeting. And I don't know how many times now Moscow officially, demonstratively claimed support for Venezuelan people. And I wonder if Washington is getting these messages, man. I wonder if Washington is understanding what is going on here. Let's hope they do. Let's hope they do. And if so, they will de-escalate, and Washington will de-escalate and will restrain from further attacks on Venezuela, and will not launch military attacks directly against the regime of Maduro's government, by the way, and Venezuelan militaries and the people. But if Washington will go ahead with this operation anyways, and I think they will, because this is a big plan, by the way. It's not just about Venezuela. It's about Cuba. It's about Colombia. It's about Brazil. It's about many other countries. It's about all of Latin America that U.S. wants to recolonize, right, reconquer. And so I don't think Washington will stop. And that will be a mistake, because it seems like U.S. ruling class actually believed to their own propaganda, including from Hollywood, by the way. They probably believe that U.S. militaries are unstoppable, unbeatable, and this and that. They are forgetting lessons of history, by the way. U.S. was kicked out from Afghanistan just a couple of years ago, man. And they are now planning to launch a war against their Bolivarian Republic, by the way. I mean, seriously. Venezuela is a massive country, by the way, with a very difficult terrain. And if people of Venezuela are going to fight, man, there is no way U.S. is going to be able to conquer them, right? And Venezuelan people have friends. Russians are friends of Venezuela, for example, right? And many others. And, obviously, U.S. administration wants no advice from nobody, and definitely not from me, but if they were listening, I would tell them, you know what, save your military's lives, man. Just don't dare to attack Venezuela. You are in no position to act in a way that you are acting. You just have no, I can understand that U.S. leadership has no morality, so there is no point to discuss this side of the things, right? But even in practical terms, in military terms, U.S. cannot conquer Venezuela or any other country in Latin America if locals gonna fight, man. If local people will resist. And nowadays, U.S. has very little support anywhere, isn't it? U.S. has very little support anywhere. People are moving into U.S. While seeking better life, that's for sure. But we'll understand that this is just a survival attempt to survive, right? On behalf of those people, including from Latin America. They are moving into U.S. not out of love or the respect of the U.S. And that's why in United States you're having this like states inside the states, right? When instead of integrating into local societies, these newcomers are creating their own societies with their own rules, right? And becoming a kind of a state inside the state. That's it. If they had respect, by the way, for U.S., if they had their admiration for US, they would integrate, but they probably hate US, and that's why they are distancing themselves from integration. I don't know, but anyways, warnings being issued, right, not just by Moscow, but by many other countries in Latin America and outside of Latin America, obviously. And let's hope Washington will listen, by the way. I mean, after all, Trump promised to end wars, not to start freaking wars, right? So what is he doing, man? Meanwhile, despite the U.S. blockade of Venezuela, more than a dozen of tankers have managed to load Venezuelan crude, according to Bloomberg outlet. United States has taken control of two tankers and is attempting to seize a third one, and they still are trying, by the way. Allegedly, this third tanker that U.S. Coast Guard and militaries tried to hijack. Apparently, this tanker is related to Iran or something, and maybe there are some armed guards there on the tanker. You know, my initial reading of the picture probably was correct, and there were some armed guards there on that vessel, and that's why probably U.S. militaries were unable to hijack it, because I mean I don't think they want to be engaged in a closer range gunfight on a faking tanker, right? Of course, U.S. has special forces that can achieve, can overtake that tanker, no question. But it will be costly, right? It will be costly, and it will further damage U.S. reputation. So, do they really want that? Although this morning I read that Americans still pursue that vessel. Still, it's crazy, man. It's crazy. But there are more than a dozen vessels moving in and out. Nevertheless, including tanker that is related to Russia. And yesterday or day before, I reported about this tanker which entered Caribbean, then docked in Venezuela, and it's receiving now oil, and maybe already left Venezuela or will leave in next couple of days, packed, loaded with the Venezuelan oil. And it is very much possible that there are going to be armed guards from some PMCs, by the way, on that tanker too. So yes, U.S. military should be careful, man, because those tankers can bite back crews of those tankers and their security. RT is also reporting that India announces $450 million aid to Sri Lanka, very, very noble step from India, of course. So India will provide $450 million aid package to Sri Lanka to help their island nation in its reconstruction efforts in their aftermath of Cyclone Ditwah. November cyclone left more than 600 dead, millions homeless, and inflicted damage worth $4 billion. And let's hope not just India, but many other countries from the region and from outside of the region will provide assistance, because, of course, that's what humans should do, man. When someone is in trouble, we should offer the help, man. It's a 21st century, isn't it? We should be on that level of advancements by now to help each other, not to hate each other and not to kill each other, but to help. But yeah, we can be, great species, actually, and one day we will be there, isn't it? One day we will reach that level of sophistication and advancement when we will no longer consider each other as enemies, and we will no longer harm each other. But I'm afraid we are still far away from that point, man. Sad, isn't it? We can do it, man. We are clever enough to understand that we can do it, and we should do it, but we are not doing it, man. As a whole, humanity as a whole, right? Among us, there is very many brilliant people, absolute, that are living with kindness in their hearts and doing whatever they can to make this world a better place, right? So there are very many brilliant, beautiful people among us, of course, but all of us should be good people, man. and should always try our best, right? And many of us do. I'm honestly trying. I understand that you know, I'm far from being a great human being or great representative of the humanity, but yes, I'm trying to live with basic principles of Christianity, by the way. Kindness, right? Kindness, respect, um, humanity, uh, and hopefully I'm improving. I'm becoming better human being. But there are definitely very many people among us that are like uncomparably better humans than I would ever be, probably. Those people are, brilliant. Total kindness, right? And let's hope one day always gonna be, or at least in next 100 or 200 years, whole of humanity gonna be on that level. Anyways, RIA Novosti is reporting that Putin and Aliyev discussed the bilateral relations by phone. Putin is, of course, Russian president. Aliyev is the president of Azerbaijan. And, dear friends, a couple of months ago, Aliyev, or Azerbaijani side, let's say, I think under the directives from London and also Ankara, and Ankara is, of course, British proxy. So Azerbaijani leadership decided to escalate with Russia under foreign influencer, and they did, by the way, and they escalated, and the relationships between two countries, relationships that were on a very high level, by the way. And I'm talking about relationships on the political level. There is no issues, like major issues between the peoples of Russia and Azerbaijan, right? And cooperation in economical field still continues, right? You might be surprised that, yes, despite political crisis that we witnessed, there was no limitations imposed on communities of two countries to cooperate. And business is usual, right? In economical or a number of other fields. But on a political level, unfortunately, as we see serious escalation, I was kind of shocked, by the way. I did not expect that Aliyev, who should know better, would escalate with Moscow this badly, man. And I think relationships were damaged so much so. I think even Putin also was probably shocked, man. Right? Why would Aliyev do this stuff, man? Or his government, right? And on behalf of whom? And on behalf of London? I mean, seriously? You are jeopardizing relationships between Azerbaijan and Russia for geopolitical interests of their globalists and their Western ruling class, for London, by the way. What are you doing? And so, yes, relationships were damaged, by the way. It is clear that I think Putin took it as a personal insult, this escalation from Azerbaijan's side, because he was very friendly, by the way, towards Aliyev, very friendly, and relationships were good between two countries. And even though clearly in last couple of months there were attempts to kind of restore relationships, and this phone conversation is clearly indicator of that too. I mean, damage was just too freaking serious, man. And I don't think Aliyev and his government will actually manage to restore relationships with Russia, man, on the level that it was before. It was crucial mistake, man. What they did, man. They captured Russian citizens, by the way, beat the crap out of them. Journalists, by the way, they tortured them. They televised this, right? They made some crazy statements, nasty statements. I mean, why? For British freaking elites, man, to make them happy? And Azerbaijan is under heavy influence, by the way. BP was like Soviet Union was not even collapsed yet when UK infiltrated Azerbaijan big time through different means, including through energy companies, and captured basically energy sector of the Azerbaijan. And BP is British Petroleum is a shadow government basically in Azerbaijan, right? So yes, it is good that conversation had happened. Probably there are some people, influential people in Azerbaijan or in Azerbaijan leadership, possibly also, that regret what had happened, right? And for example, there is a little nuance that the first vice president of Azerbaijan, Mehriban Aliyeva, joined the conversation, and Mehriban Aliyeva is a wife, I believe, wife of Aliyev, right? And this step that she joined the conversation, also I see as an indicator that maybe Baku actually wants to like restore relationships, right? And maybe we will see some progress in this regard, but yeah, it was very very unfortunate, by the way, what has happened. Very unfortunate. Baku should never go that far, man, to escalate with Moscow. But yeah, things happen, isn't it? Sometimes even brothers do fight, and when brothers fight, it's always ugly, man, right? And so yes, that I hope that's how everybody sees this confrontation, and hopefully Azerbaijan will never ever escalate with Moscow on behalf of anybody. If they have some issues, original issues, let's discuss it. Let's work it out, but never escalate with us for someone, man, for globalists or for anybody. If you have an issue personally, let's talk. Let's deal with their issues, right? But do not fight me for on behalf of someone else, because it's not gonna go down well, man. Anyways, it is good, by the way, that sides talk, and it is good that I mean, because Mehriban Aliyev joined the conversation, I think Azerbaijani leadership truly wants restore the relationships, and maybe we will see some progress in this direction next year, because relationships were great, and that's why I was surprised, right? I would not be surprised if Armenia will do some shit, right? Under their current leadership, under the Pashinyan. I would not be surprised at all. And they do make quite a lot of anti-Russian steps and statements, because they controlled by extreme anti-Russian forces. But Azerbaijan is a bit different, by the way, and Aliyev clearly demonstrated that he's a clever politician. His father was a clever politician, and he is a clever politician too. And that's how he's managing to maintain the power in this quite difficult area, geopolitically speaking. And this escalation was very unfortunate, to say the least. And let me end the new segment, dear friends, on this quite interesting news that BRICS has developed a great criteria for admitting new members to the organization. Lately, BRICS has become somewhat quiet, isn't it? There are no much news or no much headlines about some activities from the BRICS, which is unfortunate a little bit, of course, but nevertheless, some work is being done. And for example, BRICS has developed a specific criteria for deciding whether to admit a new country to the group. Brazilian ambassador to Moscow, Sergio Rodriguez dos Santos, announced this in an interview with the TASS News agency, and there are quotes here. We did not discuss admitting new members during the Brazilian presidency in organization, but we focused on integrating those who recently joined the group, he noted in response to a question about the matter. Perhaps this could happen in the future. Certain criteria already exists that BRICS members use to decide whether to admit a new country. For example, the candidate country must have a good relations with its neighbors and be opposed to unilateral sanctions. And of course, such a decision is made by consensus, the ambassador added. Rodriguez dos Santos also recalled that during the Brazil's 2025 BRICS presidency, Indonesia was admitted as a full member, which is a big deal, by the way. Indonesia is a very important country on a world scale, and especially in terms of global south, by the way. It's like 300 or 400 million people, isn't it, that live in Indonesia? By the way, it's a massive country. It's an island nation. It's like thousands of islands, right? Big and small, from Java being the biggest one, I believe, and there is numerous others. And population, by the way, 300 to 400 million. This is the most populated Muslim country in the world, Indonesia, right? So it's a big deal. It's a big deal that Indonesia is a BRICS member state. It's a great success, obviously. Uh, so, uh, so Rodriguez de Santos also recalled that during the Brazil's this 2025 BRICS presidency, Indonesia was admitted as a full member, while Vietnam and Nigeria were admitted as partner countries. Also important, obviously, the priority was to integrate and include those countries that recently become new members or partners into BRICS works, so that they could become familiar with their procedures and their ongoing discussions. Currently, during our presidency this year, the issue of new members has not been discussed. The ambassador explained the BRICS group was founded in 2006, as you know, dear friends, and originally it was built by South Africa. No, BRICS was founded in 2006 with South Africa joining the original group, Brazil, Russia, India, and China in 2018. Egypt, 2011, sorry. Egypt, Iran, United Arab Emirates, and Ethiopia become full members on January 1st, 2024. And by the way, now you can see certain links why UAE is playing quite a big role as a mediator between Russia per se and some other countries, right? UAE is a BRICS member state and embraced BRICS membership, while Saudi Arabia is supposed to become a BRICS member, and they rolled back on this decision, their own decision, by the way, later on, I guess, under their heavy pressure from US and UK, right? And I think that was a mistake on behalf of Saudi Arabia, by the way, and they should rethink their stand, and they will probably, once they will gain little more independence from Washington and London, once they will pull out little more assets from the Western financial and the banking system, well, then they will probably go ahead and ask BRICS once again to become a full member. So in 2024, Indonesia, Kazakhstan, Cuba, Malaysia, Thailand, Uganda, and Uzbekistan have officially received partner status, and Nigeria joined on January 17th, by the way. So yes, that's quite stuff, isn't it? And BRICS definitely is a keystone, major building block, let's say, among Shanghai Cooperation Organization and number of other institutions, international institutions, is there for emerging multipolar world, of course, right? And ideally, BRICS will start playing even much bigger role in the world's affairs than it is now. A couple of days ago, by the way, I read an article in which there was a statement from Iranian side. IRGC was reporting that Iran sent their naval vessel, battleship basically, to participate in BRICS, by the way, naval exercises. And I was a bit confused because BRICS is an economical alliance, right? BRICS naval exercises sounded strange to me, right? And I did not share that information at the time because it caused confusion to me. And I'm just telling you now this to highlight certain internal directions, right? That some countries might push inside the BRICS itself. Because you see, IRGC representative said that there are certain exercises, maritime exercises, and that person called it BRICS exercises. So I assume certain countries inside the BRICS probably are thinking about bringing in some military cooperation elements to the organization, and that will be huge, isn't it? If BRICS will implement some military wing to itself, then yeah, that will change everything, right? And clearly there is some internal talks about it. Otherwise, this Iranian official would not say such a thing as a BRICS maritime exercises, because BRICS is not a military organization. BRICS members do have regular exercises with each other and together, right? But it's a stater, it's a bilateral agreement. It's not because of the BRICS, right? But yes, there is a possibility, I think, that sometime in the future, in next 3 to 5 years time, maybe some military wing will be formed in BRICS. It's not going to be easy, man, because can you imagine? There are a number of countries in BRICS that have some issues with each other, to say the least. India and China, for example. But who knows? Maybe military cooperation, potential military cooperation between the two, will actually help to de-escalate. It could be helpful, actually. So yes, anyways, dear friends, this is it for today's live stream, today's new segment. Hopefully you liked it. Hopefully you find it informative and useful. And I can see, dear friends, I can see super chat from a blurb on Rumble, and let me highlight, dear friends, this super chat. This super chat was and Blorb, thank you very much for your super chatter on Rumble, of course. And day before yesterday, you also sent a message through super chat, and I saw it when stream was finished already. There is delay of 15 to 20 seconds or something like that, and because of it, stream was finished, and then this super chat appeared, and I was unable to highlight it. My apologies for that. I'm highlighting it now. And there is today's super chat from Blorp. Let me highlight this, dear friends. You're all gonna like it and join comment of the Blorp, because this comment is Merry Christmas. So Merry Christmas to everybody who celebrates this great day. Tomorrow on 25th, sorry, of December. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, dear friends. All the best to you all. All the best. So thank you very much, Lord, for congrats, for kind words, for your support and attention. And yes, dear friends, it is time to wrap up this stream. I know Christmas in the Western Christianity, as it is in Eastern Christianity, is a family celebration. And have a wonderful day, everybody. Great day, great evening. There was on the Boosty. there was on the Boosty also a message, dear friends. Merry Christmas, to you, to your families, to your friends. Have a wonderful day, by the way, and a very happy, successful New Year. And there was also a message on a Boosty, and I will highlight, dear friends, if I may, right now. Okay, no rush. Anna, my wife, will send me a screen now in a second. And how are you doing, dear friends? Is there snow in your side? Here in Moscow, by the way, last couple of days we have a frost, proper frost, right? And there are very little snow. And based on forecast, we should have a snow all day long today and tomorrow. But since morning, there is. I mean, I don't know. Maybe in some other parts of Moscow it's snowing, but not here yet. Just a little bit. Hopefully, we're gonna have proper snow by 28, 29, 30, because when it's Christmas, New Year celebrations, you need this snow, isn't it? It's to catch this vibe of celebration. It helps, of course. And there was a donation on Boosted, dear friends, from member of our community, Alexander G. Thank you very much, Alexander, for your donation. Let me highlight donation itself. So this is donation from Alexander G on Boosty, and comment from Alexander. He said, thanks, Levan. Your work is much appreciated. Thank you very much for your kind words, Alexander, for your support and attention. Yet again, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you, to your family, to your friends, to your communities, and to everybody, Valo, to everybody. Have a great day, dear friends, today and always. Let's end this live stream on a positive note, right? Thank you very much for your attention, and have a wonderful day, and see you tomorrow. I will work tomorrow too, dear friends. I can understand that very many people will have no time for internet, but nevertheless, I will do my work. Maybe I will have a day off on 1st of January, and that's about it. So, okay, thank you for your attention. Have a wonderful day. Merry Christmas, and bye for now.